Kate Lowry is a CEO coach, an author, and a comedian. Her newest book is Unbreakable: How to Thrive Under Fear-Based Leaders. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thanks for having me, George.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal life, some more about your work, and what motivated you to put pen to paper and write the book.
Definitely. All of my work is about helping people feel more connected, empowered, and less alone. So, the writing that I do, my leadership newsletter, the book I recently put out, that really helps people how to understand best ways to deal in this age of new styles of leadership. We've seen this like top down, hierarchical, my way or the highway leadership style kind of hitting all different sectors across society right now. In my coaching practice, I work with mission driven and underrepresented startup CEOs, helping them grow their companies without everything breaking. I find that most people have a little bit of trouble willing companies into existence. It's really impossible to do it on their own. And then in my comedy, I help people give words to some of those like ineffable feelings people have, different types of unease, things keeping them up at night, but in funny ways that gives them more permission and helps name what they're feeling.
And that always helps. If we can bring some humor into difficult situations, it's probably a little bit more accessible.
Definitely.
Nice. All right. So I think I sort of understand, but what is a fear-based leader?
Yeah, so my book is called Unbreakable: How to Thrive Under Fear-Based Leaders. Fear-based leaders are these types of leaders, you might think of them as schoolyard bullies all grown up. They have a very high need for control. They're very hierarchical. They're very get in line or get out. When I say jump, you say how high. And these types of leaders are actually very insecure and motivated by fear themselves. So, because that's what gets them out of bed in the morning, it's what they use to motivate others. But this is really unfortunate because when you motivate other people using fear, it robs them of creativity, innovation, and the safety you need to have people really collaborate in companies.
Yeah, I can see where that wouldn't be or lead to a very collaborative type environment.
Oh, for sure. If you've ever had a feeling like you need to tiptoe or walk on eggshells for fear of upsetting someone, you're probably around someone using fear based tactics. In teenage girls, you might think of it as the mean girl. But grown up, people don't like to talk about how there actually are leaders that try to lead through control and punishment.
Is that just because what are the reasons for that?
Well, it's because leaders like that missed a bunch of kindergarten lessons. That means that they never learned how to build trust. They didn't learn how to make friends. They didn't learn how to apologize. And so when they want to get something done, they're kind of ham fisted about it. And they use force rather than influence and inspiration.
And I know that I'd rather be invited to something than being told what to do, um, and to be have a conversation about something versus the stuff you're describing, top down, authoritarian, my way or the highway. I mean, I just perceive that as a sign of weakness, a sign that they don't have they're too tired to try and do it another way. There's probably a lot of reasons,
Yes. Um, it's kind of the fastest line from point A to point B is to grab something, right?
right?
And grabbing isn't asking for permission, it's not being nice, it's just kind of taking. And fear based leaders are like that. They like to take things from you. They want to take your energy. They want to take your time. Oftentimes, they will scheme to take some of your money. It's quite a predatory leadership style.
Is it a zero sum game kind of thinking? Does that factor into it too? There's limited resources, and I need to make sure that I am going to get enough of mine.
Yes, so it's a bit of a conqueror mindset. of this domain is mine, pledge your fealty to me or rue the day. It's very medieval, almost backwards type of thinking. They also tend to engage in quite a lot of win-loss thinking that says if you're not winning, you're losing. You're either stepping on someone or being stepped on. And so they want to always posture dominance and enforce that they're the dominant person in the ecosystem.
I hope I'm around very few of those people, but unfortunately, I think it's probably pretty common. Is that knowable? Like, what percentage of leaders can fall victim to this or fall into that trap?
Yeah, well, anecdotally, when I started my career, about 3 in 10 of the leaders I encountered were like this.
Hmm.
But in the last few years, closer to 7 in 10 I've encountered have been like this, which is discouraging to me because it suggests that people are noticing different societal role models and people in TV shows and movies acting in this way. And it's kind of making them think, yeah, like, yeah, it's cool to be cruel, when really nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I'm thinking about Simon Cowell being mean to the contestants on a game show. I'm thinking about Gordon Ramsay screaming at chefs in a kitchen. Do you think that that led to this?
Somewhat.
Part,
Yeah, when you think about the TV shows we like, House of Cards, Billions, Succession, Game of Thrones, they
all of
all
them?
have furious leaders at the top. And they make good villains. But what's interesting about people with this style is that they see themselves as superheroes when to the people around them they're really a villain.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see how that would be a pretty easy trap that people look up to the strong leader and I'm setting the agenda and I'm gonna, drive us forward. And everybody else is like, oh my goodness, not this again.
Yes. For people around them, it can be very frustrating. But what I found is that workers or people in community organizations right now really feel like they're jumping from the frying pan into the fire. They go from one company to the next, and each is a different flavor of bad. And it's at that point that they have to start learning toolkits, like the one in my book, that helps them preserve agency and autonomy in the face of adversity because they can't quite escape the adverse circumstances.
Agency and autonomy. Those are two really, 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 really important things.
Hmm.
And that when you started, you observed maybe 30% of these leaders are this, and now it's 70%. That's a pretty disturbing thing. And in a time where I get the sense of people are feeling more out of control and their lives are more chaotic, and maybe it's because of this, or it's all sort of feeding into everything moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah, leadership styles go in cycles, just like bell-bottom jeans come in and out. Um, but we're in the middle of the biggest leadership shift I have seen, like in my lifetime. Really, these types of leaders are in tech, they're in business, they're in social sector, public sector. They're really any place where there is a power dynamic that can be abused. Some people are choosing to abuse it right now, and that's unfortunate for society for sure. It's demoralizing to a lot of workers. But what people need to understand is that these types of situations are not hopeless. Because these types of leaders are quite emotionally immature, that makes their behavior very predictable. And when people's behavior is predictable, it means that tactics to influence them work very reliably on them.
The silver lining to all of it, there are common tools that you can use when you find yourself in the situation that can help you to retain that agency and autonomy. So, what are some of those?
Definitely. So people should be very mindful of what information they share with a fear-based leader. These types of leaders weaponize information. So don't say things like, oh man, I can't wait to go to my kid's Little League game on Saturday, because they'll make you work through it. Secondly, you should think about these leaders as feeding on attention and availability. So if you modulate up how much attention and time you give these leaders, you can to some extent control the types of reactions that they have and reassert some of your agency. If you want to build them up, give them more attention. If you want to cut them down, you take some of their attention away. and so on.
It's like giving a fire oxygen or depriving it.
Exactly.
So, I mean, what an awful thing talking about how excited I am about my kid's game this weekend. And then, like, oh, sorry, George, you're going to have to come in on Saturday, kind of a thing, like Bill Lumbergh from Office Space.
Exactly, just like that.
So I appreciate that, being judicious in what it is that we're sharing. And that's, I guess it's sort of sad that, if people are wanting to share everything that they're doing in their lives, but also that's probably a flawed thing because we don't need to bring our entire selves to work, but just protecting our agency and our autonomy demands that we are a little bit more judicious with how we're sharing information or what or who we're sharing it with.
Yeah. Um, I think that there are a lot of different ways that you can exert your own ability to influence, but you have to kind of know what buttons there are to press. In my book, I give lists of how to gauge what the emotional maturity level of your boss is and how to meet them where they're at, and also lists of typical things that cause them to calm down and cause them to blow up, because they really do kind of have like a switchboard. And if you understand what motivates them, you can kind of trigger different reactions to try to get them to go the ways you want them to go.
So, can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, definitely. So leaders like this tend to be very status oriented. They tend to be very motivated by money. They tend to be very image focused. So, for example, if you knew that your leader had the emotional maturity of an 8-year-old, then you might know that you could easily distract them by pushing into some of the things that they're concerned about. So, if they start trying to kill an initiative that you really want to survive, you could suggest that, someone was casting aspersions on their image and distract them. Or if you know that a leader wants to fire people really badly, um, but they're really obsessed with technology, you could introduce a new technological initiative that captures their attention and pushes them away from, whoever they're angry at that they want to fire, and so on. It's about kind of building your own map so you know where to go in your ecosystem.
How interesting. That certainly makes sense. If I have a good understanding of the maturity level of the person that I'm working with, the fear-based leader that I'm unfortunately having to work under or report to, understanding what levers or buttons I can push or pull um, to better direct their attention to something that's not so damaging or disruptive to myself or my coworkers certainly makes sense.
Yes.
And so how do I figure out like what the emotional intelligence level or the maturity level of my boss is?
Yeah, so in my book, there's a chart. You might notice if someone's having a lot of tantrums, like gets frustrated easily, has a short attention span, you might be dealing with someone who's emotionally around 2 years old, in which case you need to give them a lot of breaks. You need to bring lots of snacks to meetings. You need to deal with some of their more delusional thinking by like flattering them, calming them down, thinking about how to help them soothe and regulate, and all the things you might do if you were around an actual 2-year-old, minus the baby talk. Versus if you were dealing with someone who's an emotional teenager, you might notice that they're very concerned about the status of relationships. Where are they sitting socially? How are things going? Do other people like them? And with that, it's about providing security, helping them feel secure in their social status, helping them understand that they are liked, that they are appreciated, and kind of shoring up their elements of self esteem.
So in a perfect world, there would be perfect scenarios, but we don't live in a perfect world. And therefore, if I am in a situation where I'm having to work with this fear-based leader and I really wish I didn't, but I don't have any other way, part of me would feel guilty I don't want to feel like I'm manipulating this person, but this is my livelihood and my work, and it's not manipulation. It's just I am interacting with a person who's emotionally immature, and do you understand what I'm saying? How do you square that? How do I square that in my head if I feel guilty about? influencing somebody like this?
Definitely. So tactics themselves are morally neutral. Um, for example, if you stop talking to someone out of the blue for no reason, that's ghosting and that's rude. If you stop talking to someone who's abusive, that's actually really healthy. Same behavior, different reasons.
Hmm.
And so for people that I'm writing for in my book, these are people who are trying to protect themselves, protect the people they care about. Learning these types of tactics help you protect through influencing others. And none of them are like tactics that are cruel. It's more about greeting people with curiosity and compassion and meeting them where they're at. Now, if you picked up my book and said, I'm going to use this to dominate the world, that would be manipulation. I don't recommend doing that. Please don't try to take over the world. I don't think my tactics will necessarily help you there.
Your quest for world domination does not go through Unbreakable. Sorry.
Yeah, I
Cur
know. We got to share.
Curiosity and compassion. I think that we're all better served as human beings and working at this thing together if we can approach our relationships with those two things. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the clarification. Um, do you see, I mean, I don't have any control over other people. All I can do is control me and the how I'm impacting other people and things like that. Are we essentially, or are we hoping to influence behavior for the long term and hopefully that they're going to be changing, or am I not worried about that at all because I don't have any control?
Unfortunately, they're not likely to change. People like this can change, but it's rare. And in order to change, they have to feel remorse. Um, I think that most people don't tend to move towards that process because it's very deeply painful to feel remorse for all the negative ways that you've treated someone. And so these types of tactics are a toolkit that can serve you for a very long time. Ideally, long enough for this leadership style to go out of fashion or you to find a better organization or a better company to work for.
In order to change, a person must feel remorseful. And a 2-year-old, I don't think that they feel too remorseful, or an 8-year, whatever. Somebody with a very, very low emotional quotient is not feeling super remorseful about the wake that they're leaving. Whereas the people that are reading your book are the exact opposite. They're extremely acutely aware of this and not wanting to run all over people.
Yeah, definitely. My book is all about how do you keep yourself safe while also being someone you can still like at the end of the day.
That's right. I don't want to be a spineless jellyfish. I don't want people to walk all over me. So that's
Yeah,
a really powerful differentiation right there. And going back to agency and autonomy, that really is what we're doing. It's that's what you're doing is you're helping people to reclaim or hold on to those things
yeah, for sure.
until you find another job or the leadership changes or the leadership styles change. All
Or
these
you,
things.
or you go start your own company, right? I found myself repeatedly in these types of environments and eventually decided to be my own boss.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly an interesting thing. And I've experienced this as well. And unfortunately, I left twice, 3 times, to my detriment. Um, and so I probably would have benefited. I know for sure I would have benefited from your book 10, 12 years ago. So you wrote your book too late, Kate. Thanks for nothing.
Well, it's there in case you need it again.
Yes, because certainly, yes. Because we never know. And of course I'm just kidding. So all right. Is there people probably feel like it's their fault, right? Like what am I doing? What is your message to them?
Oh, it's almost certainly not your fault. These types of fear based leaders' behavior is all about themselves and the types of support they did not get growing up that did not teach them healthy ways to behave. Know that if you are stuck in a power differential with someone who is an abusive person, they may tell you that it's your fault, but they're going to tell you a lot of lies. You shouldn't believe them. They may tell you things like, you're nothing without me, like, you're powerless, resistance is futile, yada yada. This is all just evil villain talk. Even villains talk that way to everybody around them. So whether it was you or someone else, they'd be saying the same things.
Can you even imagine saying to somebody resistance is futile?
You know, sometimes these leaders put their foots in their mouths in crazy ways. I bet some listener on your podcast has had a boss say that to them.
I'm 100% sure. I bet every combination of ridiculous words or every ridiculous combination of words has been said at one point by one human to another. So, well, Kate, thank you so much for coming on and thank you so much for your work because to your point, there's so many people that are currently suffering under some fear-based leader. And so having the tools, tactics to be able to maintain your agency and autonomy is so critical. So I appreciate it. Where can people learn more about you? How can they engage with you? And where can they get their copy of Unbreakable: How to Thrive Under Fear-Based Leaders?
Definitely. It's available on Amazon and Barnes& and Noble. They can follow me on Instagram at Kate Unbreakable Lowry, on my Substack at katelowry.substack.com, or on my website, which is katelowry.com.
Excellent. Well, if you enjoyed as much as I did, showcase your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas and the person who's constantly complaining about their boss, because that's a lot of people. You can get your copy of Unbreakable on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Go to katelowry.com. It's KATELOWRY.com and learn all about or more about what Kate and I have been talking about today. Follow her on Instagram, Kate Unbreakable Lowry, and Substack as well. I will list all of those in the notes of the show. Thanks again, Kate.
All right. Thank you so much, George.
Till next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.